our relationship with Disney, and I'm not the only one that got thinking about this, because there was a study, and it was actually conducted, and it was talking about how Disney princesses influence girls around the world. And I thought that this was a very interesting study, because a sociologist in Sweden, you really looked into what this actually does to young girls. Because normally when we start talking about Disney princesses, we just jump to princesses are bad for girls because they define their appearance, and then usually they have to get rescued. But this particular sociologist, Shara Upal from Sweden, says that there's a different concern, and that this is the fact that many classic Disney princesses are white and Western. So Upal studied the effects of Disney princesses on girls internationally, and she started this study back in 2009. And what she found is that when you looked at a bunch of different countries, she looked at all of these girls, and you asked them to describe who is a princess and what age did you start watching Disney princess films. And then she also said, do you think you could be a princess? And most girls said they had been watching Disney films since before they could remember. And they said, no, I couldn't be a princess. And this especially came up when we went to like countries like India. They'd say, draw a Disney princess. And in India, they didn't draw a single girl that had a sari or any traditional garb or anything. They drew a Western princess. And that happened across the globe during the study. And that was what they were talking about, is that these Disney efforts, now they are working towards diversifying and having these different things. But it was very interesting from this particular sociologist's perspective that even when we went and looked at countries that had a royal caste system that actually had royalty in it, they didn't perceive themselves as being able to be a princess because Disney had managed to so effectively westernize that terminology.
Color me not surprised by any of this.
It was very interesting to me because I wasn't surprised either, because if you had asked me, do I look like a princess when I was a kid, I would have said no. And there would have been multiple reasons why I didn't see myself as that particular character. But it goes back to, you don't always notice how society really imprints on you until you get older, and you have to kind of go intentionally, oh wait, this is what I feel like when I see other people like myself represented organically. So when you don't have that, you just go, oh wait, no, that's not my reality. I'm this character, or I can't be that character.
It's funny, isn't it? When we were kids, Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty were available. Were you into Disney princesses as a kid at all?
No.
I wasn't either.
Was there any particular doll or something you had you aspired or liked?
No, and I think that was part of it, is that I feel like that was why I defaulted to superheroes, or it was usually something like I would get a doll. Like if my mom gave me a doll, I remember this. I remember going, I don't want to be like that. I don't see myself like that. But I would watch reruns of Charlie's Angels. That was on, like, at the time. I would watch Charlie's Angels, and I'm like, there's a dark-haired lady, and she doesn't look like me, but there's a brunette. And I'm like, I can see that. So I ended up playing Charlie's Angels because it was whatever the closest approximation was. And so I felt like I went to that direction. But I didn't live in an area that looked like a forest. I didn't live near. None of those things were something that were easy for me to fantasize in that one. So I feel like that's part of the reason, too, why I jumped all the way to things like Star Wars, because they were on a desert. So
I remember I loved dolls that had long black hair.
Okay.
Because I have blonde hair and blue eyes, and I remember not particularly liking blonde Barbie dolls or thinking they were special or pretty. I remember if I could come across anything that was supposed to be like Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind. I mean, if I was a kid now, I would probably go nuts over like Mulan or Pocahontas. Like that would be my jam. And I remember a girl in my ballet class had long black hair, and I just thought she was everything. Then we ended up becoming really good friends in high school because we eventually went to the same school. Whatever her name doesn't matter, but I don't know. And Tuesday, okay, so let me think about this. And then the Disney princesses sort of became this gang of women, right? The thing is the main princesses that you always see is like Cinderella, Belle, and Sleeping Beauty, because they have like the pink, blue, and yellow.
Yes.
Tuesday's favorite princess was always Belle. Again, brown hair, and she's blonde. I don't know what that's about, but they say, oh, we have Mulan, and we have Pocahontas, and we have, is it Tiana from...
yes,
Tiana and
from The Prince and the Frog,
Mona, but
Moana.
they're never the ones that are on most of the merchandise,
right? Because they are new, and they did have like
they're like background princesses.
I think that it's also because I think Jasmine was the first princess that they decided they went all in on. And that was when about the time I was in college, and I ended up like working at Disneyland and watching them go all in on Princess Jasmine, who was still pretty much westernized and Disney-fied at that time in comparison to the other ones as we've slowly moved farther away. And I think it was easier to go, here's how Jasmine works, and because that costume still looked like a costume that was accessible.
My daughter was born in 2003, and at one point she was whatever when she was in that preschool age, coming into kindergarten. She had a Disney princess room, and you know when you bought like Disney princess like whatever comforter, lamp, all that stuff. The three princesses that they had on everything were those three main white ones.
It still is.
They didn't have Jasmine on any of that stuff. You'd probably have to go hard to find that.
They're still slowly moving all these people in, and I kind of feel like the fact that they have slowly introduced these additional princi. I don't know what the
plural for princesses.
The plural for princesses. But they have added in these additional characters, but not as aggressively or with the same fervor that we had these previous ones.
It's a little bit Opally-ish with their separate diversity page.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And I do think, they're
remember, always on the wings. On
the peripheral.
And it did do a disservice, I think, to a lot of culture by saying this is another example of what is acceptable beauty. And this is what happens. If you want someone to come and rescue you and to value you enough that they will come and help you in a scenario, this is what you need to look like and the kind of thing that happens. So, and I am just all for having increased diversity in film of all kinds, because you do need to organically see how you're portrayed in these things. And I think that this is an interesting flip of it, because when people pick apart A Wrinkle in Time, it was very important to me to see.
That was one of my favorite books. My brothers and I love those books.
And so I was happy enough with the film. I think it was a very difficult film to articulate into a very difficult book to articulate into a film. But I liked Oprah's character in it, and I liked the young girl, and I was happy to see them just organically portrayed like that and not overly overstated. That was why I was a big fan of like the Afrofuturism perspective in Black Panther. But I had a friend who saw Black Panther, and he happens to be it's this white guy, and he didn't like it.
Oh no!
But the reason, and then he brought up, he goes, "Well, why didn't they have White Wolf in it?" I'm like, really? The whole reason? White Wolf is a secondary character in the comic books, and this, not to totally geek out because that's a whole different show that I do, but in the narrative in the comic book, White Wolf was the adopted son of T'Chaka. He ended up going off doing some other stuff once they had T'Challa, and he's like basically a rogue. So the fact that he's like a mercenary, he's fine. But the fact that was the main reason that my gentleman friend couldn't relate. And I'm like, this is because I said, welcome to my world where you spend all your time going, I don't see myself represented. So you have to be able to imagine differently.
The white character in Black Panther was perfect. That dude, that extra dude, didn't really do that much. He was just like a guy who was kind of there.
He was taking up space.
Yeah. That's what
when they needed him, you're the pilot dude. Go
that's
pilot.
always what the black guy is in movies.
Yeah.
And they just threw a white dude in there, like you're kind of around and you're sort of useless and you're kind of here and you're just like an extra guy.
You have
I was like,
I think Martin Freeman was like, cool, all right, I got that down. Just look a little bit odd.
I was like, they just have like a useless white dude hanging around just being white for no reason.
My favorite line, and this is totally, I there's one where he like sneaks up on her and she goes, "Don't sneak up on me, colonizer." I used that with the guy that I was dating for a while. I'm like,
so good.
I happened to be dating a white guy at the time, and I just wanted to call him colonizer, and I'm like, this clearly is not going anywhere.
They could not have another white dude in that movie because it would ruin his role. You know, they could only
extra
have
dude.
him. Just extra dude. Just do your thing. Be a pilot. Don't be that important. Be a colonizer.
Then they tell you to shut up, and that's not good.
That's what you're there for.
I find Disney, this is such an unpopular opinion, not in this room probably, but in the external world. I just find Disney as a company scary. They, for the princesses.
They finally made too many Star Wars movies, so I'm mad about that.
Wasn't Walt Disney a Nazi sympathizer?
He had some big problems.
He was problematic. And the thing is that I worked there. Well, I worked at Disneyland. And the thing about Disneyland is that it had we spend a lot of time talking about brands. And they are trying to make their brand more inclusive. But they are so detailed. Like, I worked in wardrobe. I was a wardrobe technician. And that's what theater kids did. You either ended up in the shows.
Very cool.
Or you ended up, being the people that dressed all the people in the show. Cool. So I got to work on I started in what they called is just casting, and that's what it is. So when everybody that was there was a cast member. So everybody came in and got an outfit, and you could tell because you were not only, and things may have changed because this was quite some time ago. You could tell where somebody worked when they walked up to the window because I could sit there, ballpark their measurements, what they looked like, and go, you work in Tomorrowland, you work in Toontown, you work there, because there were certain things. Like, that was one of those places where, like, you need to have your nails that look like this, you can have your hair that looks like this. You know, they had a company standard on what you could look like when you were there.
I've read about that.
And it was, I'm like, okay, you're
their
this
makeup, the Disney princesses have exact specifications for each character.
And it was, and there's height requirements, there's all these things. But even at the time, it was, I could go, this guy works on Tom Sawyer Island. And he would come up and go, I need this. And I'd look him up on the computer and I'm like, yep, Tom Sawyer Island. And I'd give him the thing.
Wow.
Because they had a methodology to how everything is. And maybe, they have created more diverse worlds than they did when I worked there. So maybe some of these things had broadened out. But there was definitely a Disney look. Like, it was, this I thought was funny. My best friend when I worked there, her name also happened to be Shannan, just Shannan with an O. And she and I looked very similar if I happened to be a blonde girl. Like, kind of thing, because there's a type. There was a Disney type, I felt like. So I'm like, she and I got along, kind of thing. But we did look kind of like we were sisters from another mister. It was very interesting working there. It was a cool job, but it was an interesting job.
I do think it's interesting that this Disney-fication of people's idea of princesses. I also wonder how much of it is just Western European culture and fairy tale goes into, and it's interesting too, because this article that you said where a lot of these countries that they had the study done had been former colonies.
Yes.
Had the effect of colonization, which is where you get that whole, the West European, British colonization. All these different factors have gone into the world, and then Disney is just the latest force coming upon them. It's been a few centuries worth of different influences, with Disney being the cherry on top.
Right.
And that was, it's been a long time coming.
I think Disney
influence.
does colonize. I think they
colonize.
the
that's
mental.
what I mean, but it's not just been them. That's made this happen.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But I think Disney colonizes the mental world of girls around the world, right?
And that's what they were saying, is that this particular study showed that thanks to this particular image of princesses, that these girls said that they lack what they perceive as princess characteristics: beauty, desirability, and Americanness.
Wow.
And that was the concern.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
that is interesting.
Yeah,
that's direct from.
So, okay, Disney, don't sneak up on us, colonizer. That's what.
There's your line.
Don't sneak up on our
colonizer. No, it's just tickles me that bothered him, and his take from the movie wasn't the same as mine, because I watched it, I think, with my daughter, and we were like, oh my God, this is great.
Right.
Is he going to be the only white dude? Oh my God, I love it. Like, we were just overjoyed at that character.
Well, we'll have to do a rewatch. I'll come and watch it with you.
Oh, yeah. You'll like watching it with me. I have color commentary.
But
I see what you did there.